Some of you are terrified of being fully seen by Allah, even while worshipping Him. Think of a 29-year-old man posting Islamic reminders online every day. People admire his discipline. They share his reflections about tawakkul. They message him asking for advice about sincerity and faith. But one night after everyone sleeps, he sits on the edge of his bed, unable to make dua honestly. Not because he stopped believing, because he suddenly realizes he does not know who he is without being admired. Or think of the woman who recites Quran daily, attends Islamic classes, and appears spiritually composed outwardly. Then one jealous thought enters her chest during prayer, and panic floods her body. How can someone who worships Allah still be this ugly inside? This is the suffering nobody talks about honestly. Not public hypocrisy, exhaustion from constantly managing identity, trying to look sincere, trying to feel pure, trying to maintain the version of yourself you want Allah and people to see. But Ibn Arabi says something terrifying about this state. He says Allah's gaze does not merely observe the soul, it dismantles illusion. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what Ibn Arabi says happens when Allah truly turns you toward yourself. Why that exposure feels painful before it feels peaceful, and how the moment Allah looks at you directly becomes the beginning of real intimacy with Him. In this video, we are going to look at 5 specific things. First, why most people spend their lives trying to control how they are seen. Then we will examine why spiritual performance can quietly become another mask of the ego. Then Ibn Arabi will show us what actually happens when Allah removes the identities you use to protect yourself. After that, we will uncover why being truly seen by Allah feels painful before it feels peaceful. And finally, we will see why the moment Allah looks at you directly is also the moment your real relationship with Him begins. We live in a civilization obsessed with perception. Your profile picture becomes identity. Your opinions become branding. Your spirituality becomes presentation. People no longer ask, "Who am I?" They ask, "How am I being perceived?" And slowly, this creates a hidden spiritual disease. Many Muslims today worship Allah while unconsciously performing for invisible audiences. Even when they are alone, even during prayer, even while making dua. One self exists online, another exists socially, another exists spiritually, another exists privately, and the exhaustion comes from trying to keep all those selves alive at the same time. This is exactly where Ibn Arabi becomes important. Not because he speaks emotionally about spirituality, not because he offers vague mystical inspiration, but because he spent his life studying perception, consciousness, identity, and how divine reality exposes hidden truth within the human being. In Al-Futuhat, Al-Makiya Futu, Ha'ate Al-Makiya. Ibn Arabi repeatedly explains the divine unveiling Tajalli. Tajalli destroys illusion before it grants intimacy. The closer the servant moves toward Allah, the harder it becomes to maintain false identities. Allah's gaze does not flatter the ego, it reveals it. And this changes everything, because now spiritual discomfort is no longer automatically proof something is wrong. Sometimes it is proof something false is collapsing. Modern psychology calls this self-discrepancy theory. Researchers found that emotional distress intensifies when the presented self conflicts with the hidden self. Science describes why fragmented identity creates anxiety. Ibn Arabi described this same mechanism 800 years earlier through the language of hijab, nafs, nafsa, and unveiling. Science explains what is happening. Ibn Arabi tells you what to do about it. And this is where this video becomes different from most Islamic content. Most reminders ask, how do we look righteous? But Ibn Arabi asks a much more uncomfortable question. What survives when Allah removes the version of yourself you perform? Think of a 26-year-old Islamic studies student giving reminders after Jummah prayer. People admire his calmness. Young brothers message him asking for advice. Older men praise his maturity. Outwardly, he appears sincere. But after every lecture, he sits alone inside his car, replaying every interaction in his mind. Did I sound intelligent? Enough? Did they respect me? Did I appear humble? Did I sound sincere? And the irony is devastating. He believes he is serving Allah while emotionally addicted to being perceived as righteous. This is exactly what Ibn Arabi is describing in Al-Futuhat Al-Makkiyah, Futuhat Al-Makkiyah. Ibn Arabi explains that the nafs, does not disappear when religion enters life. It adapts. The ego learns religious language. The same self that once wanted admiration through wealth now wants admiration through spirituality. The costume changed, the hunger did not. This is why some of you feel exhausted after worship. Not because worship is empty, because performance is exhausting. Think of a mirror covered with fingerprints. The mirror still reflects light, but the reflection becomes distorted by whatever keeps touching it. The ego keeps touching worship, touching your doa, touching your charity, touching your sincerity, touching your knowledge, and suddenly even acts meant to liberate the soul become tools for protecting identity. Ask yourself honestly right now, have you ever done something sincerely for Allah, then immediately wondered how people perceived it afterward? Have you ever felt disappointed when nobody noticed your effort? Have you ever imagined how spiritual you appeared while being spiritual? This is the trap Ibn Arabi is exposing. Modern psychology calls this identity attachment. Researchers found that human beings unconsciously connect emotional survival to social perception. Science describes the anxiety of identity attachment. Ibn Arabi tells you why the soul cannot reach Allah while imprisoned inside performance. And here is what most people miss. The pain of spiritual exposure begins when Allah stops allowing you to feel satisfied with appearances. You start noticing uncomfortable things, your hidden motives, your addiction to validation, your fear of being ordinary, your need to appear spiritually deep, and suddenly worship feels heavier than before. Not because you became worse, because you became more aware. Many people panic at this stage. They think, I used to feel more sincere. I used to feel cleaner. I used to worship more peacefully. No, you used to be more hidden from yourself. Ibn Arabi says Allah's mercy often begins by making illusion impossible to comfortably maintain. That is why some people become emotionally disturbed as they grow spiritually. Not because Allah abandoned them, because Allah stopped letting them hide. And this is why you're private. Discomfort matters. The person terrified of their hidden motives is often closer to sincerity than the person completely satisfied with themselves. because exposure has already begun. Quran 91 speaks about the soul and its corruption and purification, not the performance of purity, the reality of it. And this is the terrifying thing about Allah's gaze. You cannot negotiate what He sees. You cannot curate your soul before Him. The version of you that people admire may not even be the real you. And once Allah begins exposing that reality, the ego starts panicking, because the ego can survive sin more easily than exposure. The ego does not mind worshipping Allah if it can still worship itself. But that is only the first layer of what Ibn Arabi is saying, because once Allah exposes the performance, He starts removing the mask itself. Think of a 34-year-old woman known for religious discipline. She teaches Quran to children. She never misses Islamic classes. People describe her as composed and spiritually strong. But privately, something has started collapsing. She still prays, still smiles, still teaches. But internally, she feels emotionally numb. One night after Isha, she realizes something terrifying. She has spent years trying to become the good Muslim woman, while never allowing herself to be emotionally honest before Allah. She performed strength so long she lost access to vulnerability. This is where Ibn Arabi becomes deeply uncomfortable. In Fusus al-Hikam, Fusus al-Hikam, Ibn Arabi explains that divine unveiling strips away imagined identities because closeness to Allah requires truth, not costume. The servant cannot approach Allah through performance forever. Eventually, the masks suffocate the soul. Think of wet paint peeling from a wall during heavy rain. The rain looks destructive, but it only removes what was never part of the wall itself. Allah's gaze peels away artificial layers, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. Many people secretly want closeness to Allah without losing the identity structures protecting their ego. They want intimacy without dismantling. They want peace without exposure. They want Allah while still preserving the image they built around themselves. But Ibn Arabi says, Allah's mercy often appears first as destabilization, because false identities cannot survive divine proximity. This is why some spiritually serious people suddenly experience emotional collapse. The person who always appeared composed suddenly feels overwhelmed. The person known for certainty suddenly feels fragile. The person admired for strength suddenly starts crying in diwa, and they think, what is happening to me? Ibn Arabi would say, the performance is dying. Modern psychology calls this role engulfment. Researchers found that people have become psychologically trapped inside socially rewarded identities until they lose contact with authentic emotional experience. Science describes the fragmentation. Ibn Arabi explains why the soul suffocates when performance replaces presence. And some of you know exactly what this feels like. You speak to everyone else honestly except Allah. You present polished spirituality upward. Even your doers sound curated. You know religious language. You know how to sound sincere. You know how to perform humility. But underneath the performance lives another self entirely. Angry, jealous, lonely, needy, afraid. And you fear that if Allah truly sees that self, intimacy disappears. But Ibn Arabi reverses the entire logic. Allah's gaze does not begin after the mask disappears. Allah's gaze is what removes the mask. And that process feels emotionally violent because Identity itself begins collapsing. This is why some of the most painful spiritual seasons involve confusion about who you are. You no longer fully believe the version of yourself you spent years maintaining, and without that identity, you feel exposed. But ask yourself honestly, was the mask really protecting you or imprisoning you? Because eventually spiritual performance becomes unbearable. You get tired of sounding sincere, tired of appearing strong, tired of curating your spirituality. You want to stand before Allah without management, without presentation, without pretending. And this is exactly why Ibn Arabi says unveiling precedes intimacy. Allah cannot heal the self you perform, only the self you reveal. But Ibn Arabi goes even further than this, because once the masks begin collapsing, something even more painful happens. Allah starts showing you what was hidden underneath them all along. Think of a 31-year-old man sitting after Fajr prayer, unable to focus. He keeps remembering a cruel comment he made months earlier. Then suddenly more memories begin surfacing. Jealousy, arrogance, manipulation, dishonesty, resentment, things he ignored for years now feel impossible to escape. And his immediate reaction is, I was better before. But Ibn Arabi would say, no, you were more hidden before. In Al-Futuhat al-Makkiyah, Ibn Arabi explains that one of Allah's greatest mercies is muhasaba muache, saba, forcing the servant into honest witnessing of the self. The awakened heart becomes unable to comfortably ignore contradiction. This is why spiritual awakening often feels uglier before it feels peaceful, because the veil begins thinning. Think of dust floating inside sunlight. The sunlight did not create the dust. It simply made it visible. Allah's gaze illuminates what darkness concealed. And this is the part most people never consider. The increase in self-awareness is not necessarily evidence you are becoming spiritually worse. It may be evidence you are finally seeing clearly. Have you felt this before? You pray more seriously than ever, yet become more aware of your ego. You seek Allah more deeply, yet become more conscious of your hidden ugliness. You become spiritually awake, yet emotionally disturbed. And you start longing for your old faith, the comfortable version, the unconscious version, the version where you felt sincere because you could not yet see yourself clearly. But Ibn Arabi says, Allah is not returning you to unconsciousness. He is waking you up. Modern psychology calls this shadow integration. Research has found that healing requires conscious confrontation with disowned aspects of the self. Ibn Arabi described this same mechanism centuries earlier, through muhasaba, muachaba, and unveiling. Science describes the exposure. Ibn Arabi explains the purpose of it. And this is where the viewer begins recognizing something terrifying. The self you thought you were protecting may never have actually existed. You thought you were purely humble, purely sincere, purely patient. But Allah's light exposed how mixed the soul really was. And this hurts because the ego experiences exposure as death. You want to run back into distraction, back into performance, back into unconsciousness, because clarity feels brutal at first. But ask yourself, honestly, would you rather remain hidden from yourself forever? Would you rather spend your life emotionally asleep while imagining you were spiritually awake? Ibn Arabi says the servant cannot heal what they refuse to witness. And this is why Allah sometimes allows uncomfortable realizations to intensify, not to humiliate you, to wake you, cue you on. 24 describes Allah as the light of the heavens and the earth, and light does something uncomfortable before it does something beautiful. It reveals. Some of you are exhausted because you keep trying to return to the version of yourself that could still comfortably ignore. Contradiction, but that person is gone. Allah has already shown you too much. You notice the jealousy, the pride, the insecurity, the addiction to validation, the fear beneath your worship, and now the old unconsciousness feels impossible to return to. This is why some spiritual seasons feel emotionally heavy. The soul is adjusting to truth, and once that process begins, worship changes completely. You stop worshipping because you believe you are pure. You worship because you finally realize how desperately you need Allah. That is the shift. Not confidence in yourself, honesty about yourself. The ugliness you see may be proof. The veil is lifting. But now Ibn Arabi reaches the deepest part of this entire discussion, because once Allah shows you yourself, exposure slowly transforms into freedom. Think of a 45-year-old businessman whose financial collapse destroys his public image. For years he built identity around success, leadership, respect, status. People admired him, invited him everywhere, praised his discipline and confidence. Then the collapse happens. The invitations stop. The praise disappears. People grow distant. At first the humiliation feels unbearable. But slowly something unexpected begins happening. His prayer becomes honest for the first time in decades. No performance, no image management, no reputation to defend. Just need. One night, during Panay, during sujud, he realizes something that changes him completely. Allah already knew everything he'd spent years trying to hide. And somehow that realization does not destroy him, it frees him. This is where Ibn Arabi reaches extraordinary depth. In works like Kitab al-Izraqi, Ta'aba al-Is, he explains that Allah's knowledge of the servant is total and immediate. Nothing inside you is hidden from divine reality. The terror comes from realizing you cannot manage Allah's perception of you. The liberation comes from realizing you no longer need to. Think of a prisoner stepping into sunlight after years underground. The light hurts his eyes at first, but the pain is part of vision returning. Allah's gaze feels painful to the ego, because the ego survives through concealment, but the soul experiences the same. Gaze as relief, because finally nothing needs pretending anymore. Quran 50 says, Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein, closer than the image you present, closer than the story you tell yourself, closer than the identity you defend. And this changes the meaning of spirituality completely. Most people think peace with Allah begins when they become flawless. Ibn Arabi says peace begins when you stop negotiating your image before Him, not perfection, honesty. And suddenly the viewer realizes something most Islamic. Content never says directly, your exhaustion may not come from worship itself. It may come from trying to survive worship while maintaining illusion. This is why some people become emotionally lighter after spiritual breakdown, because the breakdown destroyed the performance. No more pretending to feel strong. No more pretending to feel pure. No more pretending to feel spiritually impressive. Just truth. Modern psychology calls part of this radical self-acceptance. Researchers found that psychological fragmentation decreases when people stop resisting honest self-awareness. But Ibn Arabi goes much further. He says real peace begins when the servant stops hiding from divine sight itself. And ask yourself honestly right now, when was the last time you stood before Allah without trying to appear spiritually impressive, without trying to sound composed, without trying to maintain identity? Just truth, just exposure, because this is the hidden secret beneath Ibn Arabi's teaching. Allah's gaze does not humiliate the sincere servant. It liberates them from illusion. And suddenly, all the previous sections connect together. Performance exposed, masks removed, hidden, self-illuminated. Now exposure becomes intimacy, because once you stop trying to survive Allah's gaze, you finally become capable of resting inside it. Allah's gaze does not destroy the real you. It destroys what imprisoned it. But there is still one final layer to this. And this final layer completely changes how most people understand closeness to Allah. Now here is the most difficult part of Ibn Arabi's teaching. The moment Allah looks at you directly often feels like loss before it feels like love. Most people imagine closeness to Allah as emotionally beautiful from the beginning, peaceful, comforting, certain. But Ibn Arabi repeatedly suggests something much more uncomfortable. Before intimacy comes dismantling. Why? Because the ego cannot survive direct truth comfortably. The servant says, I want Allah, but secretly also wants admiration, control, spiritual, identity, emotional certainty, innocence about the self. Allah's unveiling threatens all of it. And this is why some people become more uncomfortable as they grow spiritually, not less the obvious. Interpretation says, if I feel disturbed, something is wrong. Ibn Arabi reverses the logic. Disturbance may be evidence unconsciousness is breaking apart. Have you noticed this? Some people become spiritually serious and suddenly start confronting emotions they avoided for years. Jealousy, pride, fear, loneliness, neediness. And they panic. I was happier before. No, you were more hidden before. Quran 2 says, wherever you turn, there is the face of Allah. Ibn Arabi takes this terrifyingly seriously, because if Allah's presence surrounds existence itself, then eventually every illusion collapses beneath that reality. And here is the paradox most people never reach. The self terrified of Allah's gaze is usually the false self, the performed self, the curated self, the identity addicted to admiration and control. But for the soul, that same gaze becomes relief, because finally nothing needs pretending anymore. This reframes spiritual struggle completely. You are not merely fighting sins, you are fighting attachment to the version of yourself hiding from truth. And this is why Allah's unveiling feels unbearable to the ego. It leaves no room for illusion, but for the soul. Exposure becomes mercy, because the soul no longer needs to exhaust its self-maintaining falsehood. The terrifying exposure you resist may actually be divine intimacy beginning. And once you understand that, spiritual discomfort changes meaning forever. The moment you feel most exposed before Allah may also be the moment you are closest to Him. So how do you actually live this teaching? Not theoretically, practically. What do you do tonight when you notice yourself performing spirituality again? I want to give you 3 practices rooted directly in Ibn Arabi's framework. The first is called the audience removal exercise. Tonight, before sleeping, sit silently for 10 minutes and ask yourself, if nobody ever admired my worship again, would I still want Allah? Do not answer quickly. Notice discomfort. Notice defensiveness. Notice fear, because some people love the feeling of being perceived as close to Allah more than closeness itself. This practice weakens emotional dependence on validation. It separates worship from performance. The second practice is radical dua honesty. During one dua every day, stop using polished religious language. Do not perform sincerity. Speak honestly. I am jealous. I feel fake. I want validation. I am afraid of being unseen. I am tired of pretending. Many people know how to sound spiritual before Allah while remaining emotionally hidden. But Ibn Arabi says unveiling begins when concealment ends. Modern psychology found that emotional suppression intensifies fragmentation and inner exhaustion. Science explains why hidden emotion creates psychological strain. Ibn Arabi explains why the soul suffocates behind performance. And the third practice may be the hardest. The unedited Muhasaba Muache ASABA. For 15 minutes after Isha, review your day without self-defense, not self-hatred. Witnessing. Ask yourself, where was I performing? Where was I honest? What moment today felt spiritually artificial? What moment felt real? Do not justify yourself. Observe yourself, because the soul cannot become transparent before Allah while constantly editing its own reality. This practice builds self-awareness without emotional collapse, and slowly something changes. You stop relating to Allah mainly through image. You stop curating spirituality. You stop obsessing over how you appear. Instead, you begin standing before Allah with increasing honesty, and that honesty becomes lighter than performance ever was. Because once the soul stops defending illusion, worship becomes breathable again. Think again about that exhausted person from the beginning of this video, the one terrified of being fully seen by Allah, the one who worships while secretly afraid of what exists underneath the performance. Now, look at that fear differently. Maybe the discomfort was never proof Allah rejected you. Maybe it was proof the veil was thinning. Every uncomfortable realization, every collapse of spiritual performance, every painful glimpse of ego, every moment you felt spiritually ugly may actually have been Allah bringing you closer to truth. Ibn Arabi would say, Allah's gaze does not humiliate the sincere servant, it liberates them from illusion. And now something changes inside the viewer completely. The goal was never to appear pure before Allah. The goal was to become honest enough to stop hiding, not flawless. Honest because intimacy with Allah does not begin when the ego finally becomes impressive. It begins when the soul finally becomes real. The soul finds peace the moment it stops trying to survive Allah's gaze. And before you leave this video, sit honestly with this question. When was the last time you stood before Allah without managing how you appeared spiritually? Not performing sincerity, not curating humility, not protecting identity, just standing there, truthfully, because that moment may be the closest you have ever been to Him.